Well, good evening, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I am your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night we talked about you did not see that, and how when you make a mistake in our country of seeing what you should not see, and then making the mistake of disagreeing with those in power over you, that yes, I did see that. Yes, that did happen. Well, I'm 52 years old, and the broken bones in my body still hurt, all of which that were broken before the age of 5. Because I foolishly said, yeah, I actually saw that. Yeah, that actually happened. And then the women in my life broke my bones, which is why today, at the age of 52, I equate abuse with love, which might explain a lot of my problems with women, but that's another story for another day. And part of our master's plan is always the same. You did not see that. That never happened. You see that everywhere in the press, which is now, of course, owned by less than 1% of our total population, mostly by General Electric and Westinghouse. You see it in the government, you see it in the corporations, you see it in the banks. You did not see that. That never happened. Is Americana. So tonight I thought we might chat about violence equals civilization, and how about, I guess it's been 25 years now, we had an event in Southern California that I still remember with tremendous fondness. At that time, we called it the freeway shootings. And what would happen is this. When somebody in Los Angeles, a Los Angelino, a driver would get into their car, a man or a woman, and behaved on the freeways the same way they behaved normally, at work, in the stores, on the street, at school. Brutal, vicious, stupid, ugly, moronic thugs. They would then get into their cars, drive on the freeways, and drive the same way they acted in real life. They were rude, they were vicious, they were mean, they were cruel. And yet during the freeway shooting, something miraculous happened. These people would suddenly discover that their heads were missing. Why? Because somebody would blow their brains out. For me, the freeway shootings was a wonderful time. For me, because driving on the freeways of Hollywood became suddenly a nice experience. Why? Because normally vicious, rude, sadistic, brutal, violent people realized that if they behaved the way they normally did, the way they normally wanted to behave, they would die instantly. And I admit that this concept has fascinated me. It meant that for us, human beings, the immediate threat of death is required before we will behave like human beings. Personally, I was never concerned for my own safety because I tried and have always tried to behave like a human being. I try to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. I don't expect a parade for that. I don't expect a standing ovation, and I do not expect the clouds to part. And all of a sudden a choir of angels will appear and start singing what a great guy I am. That's really tiring when you stop and think about it. You should do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. So personally, during the freeway shootings, I was never worried about being shot because I always tried to be nice to people. And of course, in the States, that marked me as a loser and someone who needed to be gotten rid of. Usually, the concept of you being, an asshole and someone's going to kill you is kind of a bad thing for us to think about, but unfortunately, it's true. I mean, to be, the death signal in the United States, the death signal is, having a job, ever having a woman, because if you're nice to people, you're considered to be a loser, and you're also considered to be a fool, but that's just the way we are. And I, of course, was bold. But it did demonstrate to me, the freeway shootings, very clearly, what makes us human beings. The threat of violence. Right then, right there, no argument, no discussion, no lying, no BS. You behaved like a jerk and someone was likely to shoot you in the head. Isn't that amazing? We have to be afraid to behave well. The empty promises of heaven, and the afterlife really don't mean much. But you threaten us with a vengeful God who will smite us and then send us all to hell. And this, of course, are churches, unless you give them all your money. You're going to hell, and they're going to leave you in the street, homeless, broken, and alone. Of course, my question always is when churches ask for money, my question is, why does God need money? The very great comedian, the very intelligent man, George Carlin, used to do a comedy act on that subject. Why does God need money? You can still look up his videos on YouTube. But again, it's still the same thing, the threat that God will punish you if you're bad. So, if you don't have the threat, you're not a human being, whether the threat is real or fantasy. So why do we as a people, as human beings, need to be threatened with death, with violence, in order to behave the way we should behave? Now, a German friend of mine that I met back in New Zealand, and who after 2 years of abuse and poverty finally threw everything away that he had and to flee back to Germany, he asked me a few days before we both left Wellington what it would take to make New Zealand a country worth living in. That was a tough one. I had some, financial ideas, but none of them were practical. So my thoughts were, ended to be very simple, as my thoughts often are. Controlled violence. War is supposed to be controlled violence. Unless you're an American or British or Israeli, then war is just brutality for the sake of brutality. But I thought about this. You could go to the world's greatest experiment in social engineering, in mind control. Go to New Zealand and try yet another social engineering experiment. They're all set up for it anyway. After all, if you read the newspapers in New Zealand, it's a very common practice to rape Asian women in the streets in Auckland in full view of everyone. Why? Because they are, after all, not us. They have dark skin, they have almond eyes, they're a foreigner, she got what she deserved, and this, of course, is the New Zealand point of view. I'm thinking, to answer my German friend's question, that once a year, find the 12 worst, most idiotic, most moronic managers in that country. Politicians, corporate managers, doesn't matter. Sadly, this will be very easy. Basically, swing a dead cat and then hire, and you've got your targets. Then you go out and you hire one good ex-U.S. military sniper, a professional killer, trained and funded by your Uncle Sam. Hire this trained killer to shoot each of these moronic, vicious, brutal monsters in the head. One bullet per target, one clean, fast, quick shot. And then just leave the body in the street in full view of everyone. And then do that once every 12 months. Make it a completely predictable event. The 12 worst managers, politicians, CEOs, VPs, shot dead, one bullet in the head and left in the street as a warning. Utopia? In New Zealand, you'd have it within 3 years. And that's why utopia is impossible. Without violence or the immediate threat of violence, people will behave well like human beings. Maybe we are not who we thought we were after all. Maybe who we really are is what we've always seemed to be. Monsters. Maybe that is why the definition in the law dictionaries of what a human being really is are all the same. A monster. So maybe at the village we will try very hard not to find human beings. Maybe what we should find are mutants. Maybe the 98% of the cattle, of course we can just forget about them, because they've forgotten about themselves. Which leaves the 2% solution, you and me. Maybe we're not human after all. Maybe we are mutants. Because remember, the majority is always sane. That's the definition of insanity, what the majority considers to be normal. And you and I, quite obviously, are not normal. Therefore, we must be mutants. So I guess at the village what we need to find are not people, or not human beings, but mutants. The definition, I hope, of a mutant is somebody who thinks for themselves. Someone who looks at the world and sees reality and not fantasy. Someone who looks at the people around them and holds hands and say, together we can accomplish anything. Somebody who will look at each other and say, we're all important. I'm important, you're important. Let's treat each other that way. And we have some ancient technology, not that we developed, we just found somebody who had it, will help us answer some of these troubling questions when we interview people. You won't be able to lie. And we'll tell you we're doing it while we do it. Say, here's the gizmo. I'm asking you questions, just so you know. You won't be tricked. You won't be fooled. And you'll tell us the truth. No pain, no radiation, no fallout, nothing. You'll simply tell us the truth. It's a very rude thing to do to an honest person, and I will apologize in advance for it. But it's necessary. And the other thing that's necessary is that every member of the village will be armed. And we will teach each person to protect themselves. And together we'll protect each other. But no one will be helpless, and no one will ever be alone. Everyone will know how to feed themselves, how to clothe themselves, how to heal themselves. No more centralized control. Each of us will be sovereign unto ourselves. We will be a nation of individuals. And I hope that you are a mutant. I hope you're not people, and I hope you're not a human being. Because you know what rats those guys are. For all of us here at the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk. Wishing you a really good day, and please always keep at least one good thought. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel finding his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race, their black magic, captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.